the patient who couldn't exist. Dr. Callum Reeves had been practicing therapy for 11 years when Ada Marsh submitted her intake form. He had treated anxiety, depression, OCD, trauma, dissociation, attachment disorders, and one very particular case of a man who believed he was slowly being replaced by the sound of traffic. He considered himself difficult to surprise. Ada's form was thorough, more thorough than most. Date of birth, employment history, family history, presenting concerns. She described intrusive thoughts that had begun 4 months prior, specifically the recurring certainty that someone was watching her from inside her memories, accessing them from the wrong direction. He scheduled her for a Tuesday at 3. The first session was unremarkable in the way that first sessions always are. Introductions, ground rules, the careful calibration of a new therapeutic relationship. Ada presented as intelligent, composed, and slightly too observant. She had the quality of a person who noticed your blinking. "What I experience isn't like a watcher," she clarified. "A watcher observes. This is more like a reader. Something is reading my memories the way you read a file, from outside, backward." He wrote, "Unusual metaphor, consistent self-awareness, no apparent psychotic break." The second session, Ada described a new development. She had begun receiving memories that weren't hers. Not visions, not fantasies. Factual, sensory, specific memories of a life she hadn't lived. A boy, around age 7, falling off a red bicycle in a driveway that smelled of cut grass. A kitchen with a crack in the yellow tile above the dishwasher. A particular quality of winter light through an uncurtained window. Callum made notes and said the appropriate things about memory consolidation and cross-contamination during trauma processing. He scheduled her for the following Tuesday. He did not recognize the bicycle until that evening. He had been making dinner, cutting onions of all things, the ordinary violence of a Wednesday, when the image surfaced without warning, his red bicycle, the fall that had chipped his front tooth, the driveway of the house he grew up in, which had smelled of fresh-cut grass because his father always mowed on Saturdays. He told himself coincidence was common, childhood imagery overlapped. A bicycle was a bicycle. In the third session, Ada described the kitchen tile. Yellow, cracked above the dishwasher. Callum had grown up in that kitchen. The crack had appeared when he was 9, after a minor earthquake, and his mother had covered it with a rooster-shaped magnet until the magnet fell behind the dishwasher, and neither of them bothered to retrieve it. He had never told anyone about that kitchen. He had never found occasion to. "Ada," he said, and his voice was professionally controlled, even as something cold moved through him. "Can you describe the window? The winter light you mentioned." She described it precisely. North-facing, uncurtained, a single pine tree outside that caught the early snow and held it in horizontal layers on each branch. The window of his childhood bedroom. He had looked at that pine tree for the first 18 years of his life. He ended the session early and cited a scheduling conflict. That evening he opened Ada's intake form to pull her contact information. He would refer her to a colleague, someone without his very particular conflict of interest. He would craft the referral carefully, citing fit and specialization. He would not mention the kitchen or the pine tree. The phone number on Ada's intake form rang once. Then a voice answered. It was his own voice, speaking from a script he did not recognize. "Dr. Reeves," the voice said, using the measured cadence he had spent years cultivating for difficult conversations. "I imagine you're frightened. That's appropriate. The discomfort you're experiencing is not the disorder. It's the treatment." He hung up. The call log showed the number as his own cell phone. He sat on the couch in his office until 11 o'clock and watched the shadows change and catalogued, methodically, the arguments for rational explanation: sleep deprivation, auditory pareidolia, a patient who had researched him extensively and constructed a persona from publicly available information. His childhood home's address was findable. The bicycle, the kitchen, a skilled enough researcher could reconstruct details that felt private. He made the argument carefully and thoroughly, and did not believe a word of it. Ada's fourth session arrived, and he almost canceled it. He left it scheduled because cancellation felt like concession, and because he was still a professional with a duty of care, and because something in him needed to see her face when he asked her directly. She arrived at 3, exactly as scheduled. She sat in the chair across from him and looked at him with that unblinking quality and said without preamble, "You called the number." "I'd like to understand what is happening," he said. "So would I," Ada said. "That's why I made the appointment." The word appointment landed in the room with a weight that made no immediate sense. He sat with it. "Who made this appointment?" he asked. "You submitted the intake form, but—" "You submitted the intake form," Ada said, not accusatory, patient, the way you would correct a very small misunderstanding. "You submitted it as me, 6 weeks before we met." The session notes from their previous conversations were on his desk. He pulled them out. 12 pages of handwritten notes in his own handwriting, dating from the Tuesday of their first meeting. He recognized the handwriting precisely, the particular way he formed a capital R, the way he abbreviated session as assisen. These were his notes. He had written them, but in the margin of the first page, written in red ink in a hand he did not recognize, was a single sentence. "He will ask the right question on the 4th meeting." He looked up at Ada. "What is the right question?" he asked. She tilted her head. Outside his window a car passed, leaving a long trail of ordinary sound in its wake. "You already know what's in the file," she said. "You've always known. You wrote it. The question isn't what's in the file. The question is why you created a patient who could access the parts of your memory you've spent 11 years teaching other people to survive." He sat very still. The memories were not being accessed from outside. They were being accessed from inside, by something he had created and populated with his own most private self, and then sent out into the world to sit across from him in a chair and wait for him to catch up. He found the intake form in his sent items, dated 6 weeks prior, filed from his email address at 3:47 in the morning, during a period he did not remember being awake. Ada Marsh. He stared at the name for a long time. It took him 11 minutes to see it. He sat for a long time after that, very quietly, in his professional chair, in his professional office, listening to the building settle around him. Then he opened his laptop and searched for what he had been treating, in all his patients, all these years. The thing beneath the anxiety, the depression, the dissociation, the intrusive thoughts, the wound that no session could reach because it predated language. He had been circling it for 11 years without looking directly at it. The next intake form arrived at 3:47 the following morning. He was awake for it. He watched the email send itself from his open laptop. The patient's name was different. The memories described in the form were the ones he hadn't yet given to Ada. He did not call the number this time. He opened the form, read it carefully, and scheduled the appointment for Tuesday at 3. The work apparently was not finished. If something in this story felt familiar, like a memory you can't quite place, subscribe, and we'll keep reading together.